This is the 22nd episode, and we don't have a theme song, so I'm singing this silly tune. Oh yeah! Alrighty, dear folks, and welcome back to the Minsk and Friends Speakeasy as we are wrapping up the year 2023 here at the Speakeasy. It's your pal Minsk.
And Joonatan.
And once again, we are convening here to take a look back at this year in video games, I suppose a little bit in general. And this one's been a interesting year for sure on that front, as we've surmised several times this year, right?
Yeah, a pretty good year for games and terrible year for game making.
Yes, this is supposed to be a occasion for celebration, but I think it does bear repeating all the gross stuff that happened for developers this year. We covered this quite a bit in depth the last episode, so I'm not sure. And there hasn't been a lot of new crazy developments since last episode, so I don't think we need to rehash all of that too much. But I think, yeah, it would be remiss if we didn't once again acknowledge that a lot of developers got served the short end of the stick in this landmark year, quote-unquote.
Especially since between recording the last podcast and this one, there's been a new round of layoffs again.
Oh, good. Never mind. I stand corrected. So, yeah, but it's basically more of the awful same, is how you could put it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just been a rough year for everybody involved.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, a little caveat here, obviously, as we're going to be getting into the games, then we feel for the developer side, and I'm not smart enough to offer any answers to this awful puzzle that the industry finds itself in, but I hope some kind of solution can, I hope things will improve, and we are thinking about you folks even as we, honor your output today.
Yeah, a celebration for that is just celebration for the game itself, and definitely not the everything else.
Yeah, not a lot of warm words for the big corpos, I guess, is what you could say. But
yeah.
Apart from that, before we get into all of that, how's the year otherwise been for you, Joonatan?
It hasn't been too great. It's been a lot of health issues and everything, so I'm glad the year is coming to an end, but at the same time, I am already stressed out over all the stuff that I still have to do before the year ends, and also all the stuff that is coming up at the start of the year.
Yeah, I can feel for that. I handled this year all right, but it has been a surprisingly busy way in a lot of things, by a lot of factors coming into it. So it's never much of a break, I don't think. But we hang on somehow.
Yeah, I just kind of have to hunker down and keep going.
Yeah. Before we get into the games, is there something you want to mention outside of video games that really is like this year that is really worth bringing up for folks?
Oh, I didn't even prepare anything for that. I think
I'm sorry, I sprang this on you.
I mean, normally I probably would have my list of top 10 movies of the year, but I haven't even begun, because I saw so many this year again that I haven't even begun to take note of those, but quickly, I would probably say that this was a good year for film because we got to have a new Miyazaki. So we got How Do You Live, or in the West, The Boy and the Heron, which was absolutely spectacular.
Oh, right. So that was good. Cool.
It was, yeah, and it's great in its own way. It's very different again from everything he's done, and it feels a lot looser and a lot more reflective. But it is really good. I really, really loved it. And then we got a new Martin Scorsese film, The Killers of the Flower Moon, which was also spectacular, and we got a really, really good new Godzilla -1.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't know if it's a recency bias because we just saw it a week ago, but that was such a good movie. It's been on my brain all week now. I really liked that one.
Oh yeah, and it just hits every single thing you would want from a Godzilla movie.
Really satisfying. The two things I would change about it is, and then it would like be like absolute like perfect movie for me almost like some of the Japanese nationalism regarding the war could have still been toned down. It was pretty good about being critical about the Japanese side of the war, but there was a little bit of still like a little bit of pride coming through in their military industry a little bit.
Well, I kind of liked the fact they allowed for the, like, not the military pride, but the national pride. Like, you know, we did, because like because it was really boiled down to a really subjective view, like the street level view.
Yeah, of course.
So like in that sense, I kind of liked it that it allowed for the fact that if you have like your average Joe on the street going that we're going to be protecting our neighborhood and our friends and our family, then like of course that's something that they are. But then like I think that they balanced it really well with the scene later on in the movie where the fisherman guy tells the young kid that it's a thing to be proud of to have never been in a war.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I like obviously all that was a really solid line, and that's why I'm saying like this was good still on that front. Like they did a good job on that. I think I just feel a little bit of it was still papering over the effect that Japan had during the war on other countries, and mainly focusing on the travesty, the failures of Japan's army to its own people. But, you know, I might be asking too much from a movie like this to, like, give, like, some kind of credence to that. I don't know.
I think it may have detracted from what... I think if they would make another Godzilla that would be more about the, like, the general war and then, like, the trauma of that, then that would probably be more... This was probably much more about the whole average citizen left behind by the military-industrial complex. And like they talk about that, how there's one thing this country does well, and it's making things silent or being silent about things.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like it really wasn't the focus of the area, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but
no, I get why you want that. It's a really heavy and difficult topic, and I can understand why you would want it there, because it's something Japanese films don't explore too often in that way.
No, maybe I'm just thinking of it in the backdrop of some, you know, still existing less savory nationalistic tendencies in Japan that are still extant. So maybe that's making me be a little alarmed. And I admit that as a Westerner guy, maybe it's not my place to be calling that out. But, you know.
Yeah, I've been reading the director's quotes on this, and he's so adamantly against that nationalist thinking, and he's so far to the left with this kind of like what Japan needs to do to move forward by accepting its own past, that I feel that whatever like stumbles the movie may have, that they're probably just because they didn't have space for it as opposed to intentional.
No kidding, yeah. That makes sense, because it's a very lean movie. It's like very well done on that sense. Yeah.
It's like 90 minutes or something like that. It's like it just breezes by.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. So that was the one thing that but you make good points about why the movie is the way it is. The other thing I would change is that the very last scene before the credits roll, I would have left out, because it kind of undermines the sense of closure that the movie has. And if there's one Godzilla movie that I think deserved a sense of closure, it's this one and its characters. So the last like 10 seconds, I really don't want to get into spoilers, but it being kind of like this horror movie thing of maybe it's not over yet. I really wish the movie didn't do that after all.
I get that. I kind of read it as a thing of, you know, this stuff will always be a part of the, because Godzilla is such a it's a creature of trauma. So I kind of read it as that, you know, you can bury it, but it's always going to be there. But I do agree with you that they could have easily just left it like as a little thing at the very end of the credits, like just the roar or something like that, or changed it a little bit.
Yeah, that's the read I've read as the explanation for that as well. But but yeah, I just feel like this could have really benefited from like much less ambiguity with that like last little like stinger at you.
Yeah, but the director is actually really interesting because his previous films are quite wild. Before Godzilla -1, he directed Stand By Me Doraemon Part 2 and Stand By Me Doraemon 1.
Oh fuck! Is that that was the CGI movie, right?
Yeah, and he also directed Lupin III the First, which is the CGI Lupin, and that was a real banger. I really enjoyed that one too.
Oh man, I've seen Stand By Me Doraemon, and now like everything adds up when you say that he made that movie. That explains everything about the like, because he handled the like the motions of the characters in like a and like the situation of their life so well in that movie.
Yeah.
Now I see the code, like what's going on here.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Part 2, but I've seen Part 1 and I really enjoyed that as well. So I'm glad to see that he's branching out. It was funny because he was asked about what he wants to do in the future, and he said that he would love to work on a Star Wars film, but I don't.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, but he doesn't think that they'll let him have because the budgets will be too big. Because like again, Godzilla -1 was $15 million, and
exactly.
It looks absolutely like a massive film, like something that would cost $300 million here.
Yeah, of course, I hope there wasn't crazy crunch involved in this one. With Japan's work culture, that's always a little bit of a scare. But
the director did the CGI himself, and was the CGI director as well. So he worked with Square Enix and another place. So it was like 2 studios. But like I read again somewhere that the number of effect shots in -1 is still like very little compared to what like American movies have. So
yeah.
it's I think it's smart in that sense that they keep, for example, Godzilla quite limited in the film, because when he shows up, then it's really terrifying when he does arrive.
Yeah, this I've seen comparisons to Jaws, and that really comes to mind in terms of like the shark is scary because of how little it is in the movie, and I totally see that happening here as well.
But they started work on the effects like in April of 22, and the movie released now in December. So I think that the long post-production is the year and a half of post-production compared to like a Marvel movie that has like 4 months.
Yeah.
So I think that they actually had time to work on the effects, which is good.
Yeah. So altogether, it was a good production, like in terms of like the work ethic as well. Then.
It seems by what I've been reading about it does seem that way, which is really nice to hear because you want a film that you like to have actually that the project was good for everybody involved, which I guess is why we also have such disclaimers every time we talk about games that, it's really hard for the two of us to ignore the fact that if it's something that we're supposed to enjoy, but then we know that, hey, this thing you like was made with the, tears and blood of kittens and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, we could ignore that, but like, I wouldn't feel super great afterwards. I mean, not that I feel great even bringing it up. It's a real bad situation, but you know what my point is.
Yeah, but those are at least something I would bring up. But I will probably have a actual proper best films and best TV series and all that on my site later on, maybe next week already.
Yeah, please, everybody, at the time of the release of this episode, please go to Jonathan's website to check that out. It'll be better formulated here. I just wanted to pick your brains really quickly, extempore, what comes to mind. So, yeah. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention something also myself. I really would recommend people look up the new Superman cartoon that came out this year, My Adventures with Superman. This is a phenomenally good take on Superman that really gets to like the positive core of Superman. It kind of dabbles with that whole side of what if Superman was evil, but it doesn't do that in the kind of like way that I'm kind of tired of, that just seems to really relish in the idea of what if this really good guy was actually evil. No, it just kind of it kind of brings it up as like a, scary fate. Otherwise, it's a really good look at the character, and it also some really creative liberties with like classic Superman characters, their depictions that I thought were like really fun presentations. I think it's 11, 12 episodes, so it's a 20-minute long episode, so it's a breezy watch, and it has humongous heart. And that's kind of my random recommendation on what to look up this year.
Oh, cool. I had not even... This had not been on my radar at all, so I will have to take a look.
Yeah, big reps from me, at least.
Sweet.
But yes, on with the video games then, shall we? So, yeah, landmark year, as I'm sure this will go down. This bunch of incredibly big titles. I embarrassingly have not touched very many of them. My timetable has not permitted a bunch, but I do have a top 5 to present to everybody. And I believe you also have a full top 10 that you had some trouble organizing.
Yeah, because there was quite a few games, because like this year again, I think I reviewed every major release and then quite a few indie releases as well. So it was quite a packed year.
Yeah.
So I think that I will mention, though, that like I want to give out... I had two titles that I couldn't figure out where to put them, that I like them and I even love them, but I couldn't put them in the top 10 because they just couldn't fit there. But shout out to Forspoken from Square Enix.
Oh, yeah.
Which I realized got a bunch of crap from people and was not considered by many a great game, but I genuinely really, really liked it. I thought it was a solid adventure RPG that had really, really cool ideas behind it, a really cool world, and toward like around the year as they updated it, it got even better. I really hope it gets a sequel. I hope it gets like another chance to kind of shine and prove people wrong.
The reception was so cold, not just critically, but also sales wise. So we really gotta be hoping for that. Like don't know how likely that is, but yeah, I think it would be cool if that got a second shot.
Yep. And the other one, which was the complete opposite, it actually got a great critical reception and it and sold quite well for what it was. I want to give a shout out to Hi-Fi Rush, which came out in January of this year.
Oh yeah, that came out of nowhere from Tango Gameworks, right? Like there was no build up to that, and then it just released and was another incredible game, wasn't it?
Yeah, they just essentially made like a trailer, and then everyone's like, "Oh, this looks great. When is it out?" And it's like, "Oh, it's out tomorrow, or it's out right now."
Yeah,
and like, I got sent the review code, and I remember like going like, "What the heck? This looks like Jet Set Radio. It looks like a mixture of I can't remember what it was called. There's an Xbox One that release game that was like a bunch of skating and fighting with people with funny weapons, but this was like a mixture of all of that, and it was really good. It was just so chill and so funny and so charming, and had like a really great idea of what it wanted to be and what it wanted to do. It's not a long game, and I think that it was exactly the perfect kind of a starter for the year. Like I could not see it releasing at any other point except like at the start of the year, and I really like it when studios do this kind of stuff where they just say like, "Hey, we have a game. Here it is." And then you just get to go and play it. And instead of this, here's a CGI trailer and it's going to be coming out in 4 years.
Yeah. I wish a lot of more studios would do this. I wish this model was more successful in itself. I don't know, because it's kind of cool that just happened. Like such a solid game just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. But those I wanted to give a shout out to, because they didn't fit. They just missed out on the top 10. But I really, really, really like those games. And I really hope that if, especially now during the sales season and going into the next year, and they're going to be, coming up as secondhand titles and everything, give a try. I think people will be happily surprised by both of them.
Yeah, but both are on my considerations for sure. They definitely nail stuff that I enjoy at least. So I'm definitely the good word of mouth has me interested at some point in one either of those. Yeah. But yeah, so that was basically your hazy spot 12 and 11. I really only have a top 5, so why don't you also rattle off really quickly your places 10 and 5, and I'll mention my runners up after that.
Okay,
Sorry, from 10 to 6 is of course what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Let's not jump that, but yeah.
So at 10, coming in, a late release of the year, one that I really enjoyed, Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon.
Right on.
Which was a fantastic giant robots beating the hell out of each other and then satisfying the urge for me to build my own robots and playing a really tough as nails game that actually gets easier as you go along and you get more accustomed to it.
Yeah, it's crazy how like more handily New Game Plus is going for me. There's 3 endings in this game, and you have a choice of 2 to begin with, and then once you get both, you can get the final third ending. So you basically have to play the game 3 times. And I at first balked at the idea, but like it's crazy how easily New Game Plus is rolling along. Like I just feel that much better as a player after my first campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I started playing it, I was like, oh no, is this going to be too hard? Am I going to be frustrated with it? And then I noticed that like every hour as I played it and like got more comfortable with the way that I liked playing, the game just, emphasized, yeah, go for it, do your thing. And it got easier and more fun. And I really enjoyed it. It's such a good and solid addition to the Armored Core franchise.
Hell yeah, I'm very satisfied by it.
Number 9, Octopath Traveler 2.
All right, yeah, that was a great game too. God damn.
Yeah, I loved part 1 and I loved part 2 even more, and it's just classic RPG goodness. Like
yeah, specifically if you like Final Fantasy VI, I think this is the one you owe yourself to play then. I really feel that way.
Yeah, and this could have been like, this was a really good year for old school JRPG or RPG fans, because you got, there's the Grandia Chronicles, you got Super Mario RPG, you got a really solid Star Ocean 2 remake.
Right.
Like any of those could have fit here, but Octopath is my jams, so there it is.
Hell yeah.
Number 8, a sneaky game that actually I got to play only last week, but it was so good that it instantly climbed here in the top 10. Joonatan, a small indie title from Don't Nod Studios.
Yeah, what? Joonatan?
Joonatan.
Joonatan.
Yeah, a French word for the tide, or the rolling back tide. This is a really small indie game. It's not a very long one. It's a puzzle platformer where you can play a lone wanderer as you arrive in the middle of this vast desert. There's a huge desolate tower that's filled with artifacts of like an old civilization, and you can't really tell how long it's been empty and how long, or how you connect with this place, but you are determined to climb this place and, reach the top. And it's an incredibly immersive, incredibly atmospheric and beautifully told story that reminded me of games like Eco and Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, I'm getting Journey vibes looking at these screenshots here for this game.
Lots of Journey vibes as well, but like one of the best soundtracks of the game, or of the year, just a incredibly satisfying and touching storyline. And like the main character, there's no dialogue. Everything you find is through like just the storytelling that you find from like parchments that tell like little bits and pieces of people who are either finally leaving the place or people who are climbing the tower themselves to find somebody who they know is still in the tower, or like just little stories that are told through the surroundings and just what you can kind of put together yourself. I thought it was really touching and a really great experience, and I'm really glad that it just kind of showed up out of nowhere. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, this looks groovy. This one might be going on the list of games to play on my channel to record, because this looks really an interesting one to look at. And this one's not like those like rage games where you're climbing. This it has climbing, but it's not like a Jump King
No, there's no like death state, and there's no like you can't really fail in that sense. Like if you fall, you have always like a pin in the wall, and it's like you just have to kind of time and see where you want to put the next pin. You get like 3 pins, and then at the very last one, you fall to the very first pin again, and you just start to climb over. But like I never found it to be frustrating or difficult. It's really fair. It always allows you to figure out things, and if you seem to get stuck, it really like gently nudges you in different directions to try out the climbing. But like I never had an issue with it. I never got angry. It's meant to be like meditative and chill.
Interesting. Yeah, no, like a particular beef for those rage games, but like I can't handle those. So
No, it's not like getting over it or what that game was called. But
yeah, the Bennett Foddy.
yeah, but I genuinely really, really loved it. I'm really glad that it suddenly showed up, and I'll probably be doing like a video on it later on before the year ends, because I hope more people get to it. It was critically acclaimed. It came out at the end of the last day of October, I think. But like even so, like despite the critical acclaim, I haven't seen much reactions to it. So I hope that more people discover it, because I think it's going to be one of those little cult classics that people will talk about for years to come, like Journey.
I hope so. I hate to say it, I missed this one totally, so I'm glad you at least brought this one up to me.
Yeah. And quickly moving on to number 7,
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4.
Oh yes, the new version.
Yes, and specifically Resident Evil 4 VR experience, which came out just last week. Which scared the living daylights out of me the same way that Resident Evil Village VR did. It's such a experience to play the madness that is Resident Evil 4 in first person in virtual reality.
Yeah, I remember us thinking about this, that chainsaw coming at you.
It is as horrifying as we imagined it to be, and it is so much fun. And the base game itself is a great update on the original, which is one of my favorite Resident Evil games.
Yeah.
And I'm just really glad that Capcom has kept up this really high-quality Resident Evil renaissance that we're going through right now.
Yeah, very hopeful whatever they bring out next, which they have said that they definitely aren't like pumping the brakes for now at least, so...
Yeah, so fingers crossed that next year we get a nice surprise for a new Resident Evil, whether it's a remake or something.
Yeah, either or is great.
I would love to see one of the co-op Resident Evils make a comeback, because it would be so much fun to do another co-op Resident Evil playthrough.
Absolutely, I would be super down to that.
And then number 6 is another small indie title that I reviewed earlier this year, and already at the start of the year I said it's going to be in my top 10. That is one of my favorite games of the year, Tchia, from a very small company. I'm going to actually have to check where it was from. It was New Caledonia. It's from a little game development studio called Awaseb, and it is set in New Caledonia, in a fictional archipelago that's inspired by where the developers grew up.
Yeah, that's like somewhere like Papua New Guinea, I think, right?
Yes, and it's deeply, deeply like immersed in this culture. Like all the voice actors are from New Caledonia. The music is from local artists in New Caledonia. It tells the story of a little girl called Tchia who goes on an adventure to find her father after he's kidnapped by pirates. And it is a coming-of-age story that is reminiscent of, like, classic Belgian comics. Like, if anybody grew up with any of the Belgian comics that dealt with this, they'll know what to look for. There's a lot of Jules Verne to it. There's a lot of Miyazaki to it. It's an incredibly great first game from a small studio. It reminds me a lot of Legend of Zelda as well. And there's so much to do, so much to explore. It's not technically always sound. You can find bugs in it if you want to, but it's so charming and it's so heartfelt and so beautifully made that I've been coming back to it all the time throughout the year. And it is easily one of my favorites, and I think that everybody should, do themselves a favor and go play it. It's out on all the consoles, and I think it's coming out on Steam in March of 2024.
Yeah, I'm now looking. This game looks incredibly good looking, and that's like Polynesian culture, not like super featured in video gaming space. So even on that front, like, amazing to get that kind of representation. God damn, these amazing things coming out that you don't even hear about because there's so much like other amazing stuff coming out.
Yeah, I knew that I was gonna fall in love with this game in the first, I think, 10 minutes, because it's like a little thing. Like, the first quest is that you have a guest coming and you have to find them, trinkets and like fruit and stuff just to make them feel welcome. Like, as it's apparently a Polynesian custom. And then when you do, the guest sits down and starts singing you a song about all the journeys that you will go to in life, that kind of sets up the thematic elements and the thematic world that you're going to be seeing. And every time you meet new people, you are introduced to them and to their worldview via song, and it's original songs written by these artists for the game. And
Fascinating.
I just remember just sitting down and listening to it and just going like, the game offers you that you can skip this, and I'm like, I would never ever skip this. Like, this is just such a impossibly charming and so great to see something like this, because considering all the games that we play, most of the time it is going to be either from America or from Japan, and then like, we get something like this, which like I don't think I have ever played. So I was swept away by it. I think it's going to be one of the games that I will be talking about for years to come.
Yeah, another one that I am filing down for must look into, because this is pretty neat.
So here we are. That's my the 5 in the top 10, or
the bottom part. Wait,
yes.
what was your sixth? Chia was your sixth.
Yes. So Chia, the Chia, Resident Evil 4, Jusant, Octopath Traveler 2, and Armored Core: Fires of Rubicon. Yeah,
so that's 5 indeed. Well done. That's a really solid lineup just for the beginning part.
I mean, considering that in any other year that would already be the top 5,
exactly.
And this is like just the stuff that is like in the bottom of the thing, or like the stuff that didn't make the top 5, and then we've already had Hi-Fi Russian Forspoken, so you can kind of see what a year it's been. And I've already missed out. Like, I know my top 10 doesn't include games that I probably would have wanted to, and if you asked me again next week, I probably would say different games again.
Right, shuffle up that board. But let's go with these for now, because these are great games to highlight.
Yeah,
for sure.
But how about you start with your top 5, number 5, and I will listen for a change.
Sure, although I'll just mention my honorable mentions real quickly
absolutely.
as well before we get there. I have 2, basically, to mention here really quickly. The first one... well, it came out in December of 22, but I'll just mention it anyway here. It is the game I'm playing on the channel right now, Chained Echoes, a really amazing classic turn-based RPG made by, seemingly by one man, Matthias Linda. I'm always unclear because I'm pretty sure he's outsourced at least the music to somebody else. But the point is, like, the majority of this very in-depth RPG has been made by one guy. Again, similar the Octopath Traveler 2, similar crowd of people of that like Super Nintendo era of RPGs. This one is worth checking out. Because I'm still in the middle of playing it, I didn't feel like I could really like rank it up in my list, so that's why it's only getting a shout out at this point. But it's cool. The other one that gets an honorable mention is Trepang 2 that I played for a while. Another of these like genre revivals. This one is or even video game revivals. This one is a throwback to classic FPS game Fear, or FEAR. And so it's designed to be a fast-paced first-person shooter with no like regenerating health, ducking behind cover action, instead utilizing slow motion to like stylishly take out enemies in a very arcadey flow. It plays nicely, but it turns out I personally wasn't that nostalgic for Fear, so I wasn't that crazy once I played a few levels of it in the end. Like, I had a good time, but it didn't stick with me that much. It's a nice, simple FPS shooter. I don't know. Did you have a chance to check that out at all?
But I am looking at it right now, and I do like the visuals, and I can see the whole throwback to the Fear games. I actually never played. I only played Fear 2, I think.
That was still a pretty good one.
Yeah, but like I've got the same thing that I don't really have that much of a hankering to go back to it. Although I would love to see a good cinematic style FPS that would emphasize the kind of crazy amount of decals and the crazy amount of destruction that you don't really see that much anymore, which is kind of a shame.
This didn't have that scope. This was much more arcadey, like, smaller budget effort, and it did it well enough. But and it's cool to have, in this space of FPSs, again, not have that whole cover based, hiding in covers, regenerating health action. Have alternative for that for people who like, this type of game. Great to have that, but it, didn't quite land for me that interesting.
All right. Yeah, well, it's something that I probably will check out when I get to if there's a sale on or something, but right now the backlog is so wide that I don't...
No kidding.
Can't promise anything.
Yeah. But yes, if we jump to the top 5, let's get to it. I am again going to invoke the December rule that we mentioned a couple of years ago, and this might be very very poor form of me to invoke it in a year where there were this many great games this year. But since we record in December, I feel like games that come out in last year's December are still fair game to be nominated.
It's 12 months. Yeah, that's fine.
And if someone at home listening to this has a problem with that, like, I can't help you. Whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We'll take the hate mail from Hideo Kojima. Like, how dare you?
What are you doing? No. But yes, I will toss out one December 22 game that came out that I liked enough to put in my top 5. It's River City Girls 2.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, once again, I'm somehow sneaking in a beat-em-up game into my lists. I don't know why this keeps happening, because I thought I wasn't a huge fan of the genre, but apparently it scratches an itch, because River City Girls 2, really good follow-up to the first one, which was already a really fun game. This one doesn't invent the wheel very much, like a ton. Like, the graphics aren't, like, changed up, really. There's new assets, but it's the very much the base game, but it's still the new characters add a lot to it that makes it really enjoyable, and the new story is fun. Like, I enjoyed on that front. I just enjoy these characters of this wacky River City world, and I'm just really happy to have like a, continued adventures of Misako and Kyoko. And there's a little bit of new mechanics in the traversal. It feels like a little bit just more of a open world to wander around in. The first one did it well enough already, but this one just is a little bit more polished. I have a playthrough it on my channel if anybody wants to go watch it. Another plug. It was really good.
Sweet. I still haven't played it, but like I watched you play it, and I really think that it's going to be one of those games that I'm going to take now during my sick leave, that I will just sit down and go and spend like a couple of days obsessing over.
Definitely worth it. The one big negative, which I like drops it low enough on my list, is the weird character script where the dialogue is written for Misako and Kyoko, and it doesn't change at all when you switch, or it changes very, very little. Like, they didn't write really unique story content, even though they encourage you to play with several different characters. They just had the voice actors kind of record character 1 and character 2's lines for each other. And normally, a beat-em-up game, story wouldn't be that important, but you can tell that Way Forward loves these characters and wants you to care about the story and the characters in it. So, bit of a baffling choice, even now that I think back to how immersion breaking it is that they, it's not Marion and Pruvy you're playing as. It's Marion and Pruvy reading Misako and Kyoko's lines. That just kind of drags it down a little bit too much for me not to call it out.
All right.
But, all things considered, still solid fun beat 'em up. And it gets my number 5 spot. But let's hear from you. What's your number 5?
Well, I'm glad that you started the whole somewhat, bending the rules a bit by having the last December thing. Because I'm gonna have to bend the rules a bit, and I have a tie at number 5.
Okay, sure, all right. Yes, lots of controversy this year. Oh no.
Well, it's just because there's so many games, and I could not decide between these two, which would be number 5. But my number 5 is Baldur's Gate 3.
Uh-huh.
And a smaller indie title called Dredge.
Dredge, the Lovecraftian fishing simulator.
Yeah, and they couldn't be more different from the games. The other one is a gargantuan RPG that takes 100 hours to finish, even on the basic most level. And then the other is a little fishing game where you just go out to New England in an archipelago and you start fishing, and then you start realizing that the more you fish, the more Lovecraftian things become. But they're both such incredible achievements. In theory, yes, Baldur's Gate came out already a couple of years ago. It's been in early access, so which one is actually, finished? But now it's finished, and it is a spectacular game. I am constantly finding still new ways to approach it. I still haven't even had a chance to play co-op in it. But it's the best possible way of playing D&D on your own if you don't have a group to play D&D with.
Yeah, and it's a culmination of what I would say has been happening for almost 10 years now, starting with Pillars of Eternity's release, which is that the isometric RPG genre has just come back, and now finally it's culminated, you could say.
Yeah,
like everything's been a little bit, something you can good effort, and for fans of the genre, amazing everything that's come so far. But it's just been missing a little bit that makes it the big deal that everybody loves. But now we're here.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I thought that after Disco Elysium, I wouldn't bump into another game that had such quality writing at such a level, and then this one is it's very different kind of writing. But it is so solid. Every character is well written. Even the characters I don't like because they're smug or they're hateful people or something, they're still very well written. And every single dialogue choice feels thought out. Every single thing that you can do with the mechanics feels like that they've actually had people there who have played D&D, who understand what people will do with this. And
exactly.
And it is such a joyous experience to play. It's a little too hard at times for my tastes. I'm a little surprised at how unforgiving it can be. But because I think it's the way we play D&D in our group it's very loose and relaxed.
Yeah, and I will admit to being a pretty generous dungeon master myself. I don't like putting the screws on my players. I like presenting something that makes them go, oh shit, but then the actual challenge isn't nothing impossible to handle. Our player base isn't super tactical either, so I can't toss real teeth grinder encounters.
Most of my approach is the same way, that I will rather have a good and engaging story and good engaging drama rather than difficulty that causes people to grind their teeth. So I can get why some people will like that. For me, it's a little bit of a case of that I can take it or leave it, but it never bogs down Baldur's Gate.
Right.
And in the same way, Dredge is just one of those games that I never felt like that it was punishing me for playing or for messing up or for exploring. Instead, it relied so heavily on how good the mood is and how well the game understands the kind of isolation that is the ocean. Being alone on the ocean, even though you're still you can kind of see land at any point. But there's a constant sense of dread, which I think combines really well with Lovecraftian elements, and it just runs away with this feeling that something is wrong, but you can't put there's something wrong in the world, and you can't figure out what it is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a bunch of footage of this game. That's a bold swing that game takes. It's fascinating.
Yep. So that's my number 5. The shared position of those two, I really, really love them for different reasons, but I couldn't choose between them. So there they are. Shared position. It's the only shared position on this list.
I'll allow it. Well, fair enough. That's I'd say those are great choices for number 5, and I'm curious to see where your list goes on from here, since some big names have already been dropped and we're only at spot 5.
Yeah.
Let's move on to number 4. Which one is your 4th pick?
Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
Wow, okay, speaking of, I thought this one would be higher on your list too, but here we are. All right, go ahead.
I mean, anything here in the top 5 is something that I have given 5 stars to in the in the review, and like Tears of the Kingdom is something that is so good that it could be in the top 5 of any coming year. I remember when it came out and people were worried that is it just going to be like a expansion, but it really is its own thing. Like, I played it a ton when it came out, like for the entire summer almost. Like just a lot of exploration and experimentation, and I haven't even I don't think I've seen even half of what the game has to offer.
Well, it has like 3 different worlds now, right? Because you got the regular like field, and now you have Sky World and Underground World.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's insane. Like, I knew already about the Sky World, so I was so shocked. I was so shocked when we went over to our friends and he was like playing Underground. I was like, "What the heck is this?" Like, yeah, there's like a whole underground area to explore. That's like its own like giant area. What?
And I think it speaks to the longevity of these games. Is that I think there's the same friend that we're talking about that like. He has played the previous Zelda from the day it was released until now the Tears of the Kingdom came out.
Yeah, basically whenever we'd pop in over for D&D night, more times than not, he'd probably be playing Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and because Breath of the Wild still held that there was still stuff to explore, still stuff to do, and just, adventures to find out. And like this one has even more of that. So I don't think any other, like apart from maybe Baldur's Gate, I don't see any other game on the list having the kind of long lifespan as this one. But it's such a great title. I think it's really cool to see how my biggest problem with Breath of the Wild was the world felt kind of empty and kind of dead, which was the point. But at the same time, it wasn't what I wanted out of Zelda.
Yeah, it's always nice to pop into like the town with all the like goofy villagers in your average Zelda.
Yeah,
it feels lived.
And then seeing this, where they've clearly it's now the world is rebuilding, and the music is more lively, the towns are more alive. There's people on the road. It's wonderful to see how the world is growing around you, and it's giving me a lot of anticipation for what the next Zelda is going to be, because they're going to be continuing this story and this mythology even further. But yeah, fantastic game. I can't speak anything really too bad about it, and I probably will be playing it again when I get a chance.
I will probably jump into that game as well at some point. Just the daunting amount of content is the one that's scaring me when, there are more, more succinct games on my backlog. But obviously, this looks great. I would love to pop into Zelda. And I think it's worth also calling out, like, the incredible feat that they did is they took the gameplay from Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, one of the, like, most derided games, and they were just like, we're gonna have this in Zelda now, with all the, like, modular vehicle building, and now suddenly it's, like, the most awesome thing ever. Like, everybody loves, like, the creative building exercises.
Oh yeah, and because I think they've must have adjusted something about it, but it is a lot of fun, and it's one of those things that, again, like in Baldur's Gate, it's constantly rewarding the player for messing around with the mechanics. It never tells you that no, this is how you're supposed to play the game. It just says, here's your goal, and we don't care how you get there. You do you.
Yeah, there's more obvious solutions than not in like all those like puzzle shrines. Like you can kind of see like with the supplies like what they might want you to do, but like there's no law saying you can't just make your own goofy solution to like solving all the weird physics puzzles.
Yeah, like as an example, one of the early tutorial levels has you going up to a shrine that's on a mountain, and like I was coming at it from a direction because I had like started doing the shrines in a particular order. And I got there and I'm like, how the hell am I going to get there? And it took me ages. I started devising all kinds of like contraptions and like a really elaborate slingshot that like flung me like halfway to the mountain. And then I managed to climb while chewing on roots, trying to keep myself, warm, and like finally got up there only to realize that if I had circled around the mountain, there would have been a clear path saying walk up here. but the game never forced me, never told me not to, and I didn't feel like I at first felt like a dummy for not thinking of the obvious, but instead I also felt incredibly rewarded for the fact that like my ridiculous contraptions were still on the hillside, and I could, every time I go past that area, I look at it and go, oh right, that's where I was an idiot, but at least it was fun.
Yeah, and you got to take part in basically a Leslie Nielsen movie gag.
Essentially.
Really good stuff. But shall we jump to my number 4 then?
Yes.
And it is in fact the number 4. Resident Evil 4 gets my 4th spot. So first repeat of the day of mentioned games was good enough to make my top 5 here. Yeah, what can we still say about Resident Evil 4 at this point? I keep dwelling on this, and I can't decide if this is a superlative version compared to the 20-year-old one. There's a lot of moments where I thought, oh, this one's more clever, like the way it's presented here, than it was in the original. Even though the original is so like, how definitive, I guess, in its role. But then like I'm just like, yeah, this is a fun, different take on this like scenario here. So and it plays like a dream because Resident Evil 4 already played incredibly well. So that was a very big challenge to try and make sure that works still. And yeah, it's still like it feels elevated with the knife gameplay, but it still like is solid over the shoulder third person shooting. And I don't know. We said that Capcom is killing it with Resident Evil, and this is just another example of that. I don't have very many complaints about it. I think the reason it's here on the bottom is that I still, even though it feels better in a lot of ways, it's still, the fact that I played this 20 years ago still shines through a little bit. I don't know. That's why I feel like conflicted, because then I think like, yeah, I fought this giant village chief guy earlier, but this new version where he comes crashing through the window to tackle you is hilarious. Like, that's such a funny way to like update that, like how he like takes you into his boss fight. So it's full of moments like these, and I just really like it.
It's a solid choice. It's one of my favorites of the year as well.
Yeah, it's a real bingo, you could say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, I can't think much more to say about it except it's great. Go play it. So shall I move on to the third spot here?
Yes, please.
So here is where I'm going to bring up Baldur's Gate 3. Is here in my third spot. So I was, of course, like you, very, very happy that Dungeons & Dragons was realized this well in a video game form. Like, this is Dungeons and Dragons in general has been doing incredibly well. Like it for like the whole tabletop RPG. There was some doomsayers, let's say 15 years ago, that this was going to be going the way of the dinosaur, because the current extant player base was like aging, and there were concerns that younger folks couldn't like do this thing. So I've been so happy the last 10 years to see that was completely wrong. Like, the genre has become a hit, and it like has evolved in ways to also like take into account the newer, younger generations playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's just in general it's really fantastic. All that said, we mentioned last episode the like awful nickeling and diming that the Wizards of the Coast tried to do with the open gaming license monetization. Like, that's a really unfortunate blemish on this year, because otherwise they made like an amazing movie and an amazing game. And the state of the genre is otherwise just killing it. But Baldur's Gate 3 in general, not much for me to add here either. Really wanted to just talk about D&D in general there, I guess. Oh, well. The game is really lovely visually as well, and the fact that we have characters zoom in, like it's not isometric view when you're talking to characters. I think that's what cinches it a little bit in making it such a big hit, is, having these character zoom ins with really great voice actors. Like, everybody is so like into this in this. Like, there's so many compilations on like YouTube of like, some like incredibly memorable line from like your party members of like really silly stuff that they say. And they're just killing it. And I don't know. Have you seen the D&D game that the voice actors played? Have you happened to see that?
I haven't had the time. I know of it, but it's just I haven't had a chance to see it.
Yeah, so High Rollers is the channel. It's part of Yogscast in the UK. I believe it was them. They like got to like sponsor a game where like all the like your party members, voice actors, well, not all, but a bunch of them were there, like actually playing their characters from the video game in the actual tabletop. And what I've watched, you can tell that these guys just love the characters that they got to portray. Like, this is totally a labor of love, and they're like so into like being able to realize these characters, and it really shows through in the game as well. It's an absolute like a all-star effort all around. Baldur's Gate 3. I echo some concerns about the difficulty, and I don't know. I think I'll talk more about length when we get to my number 2 slot a little bit later. But the custom character choice isn't quite my fancy. So like having a blank slate character create your own character isn't quite my fancy. So I think that's why it ends up being here in spot number 3. But a well-deserved one at that. And big ups for the guys at Larian for killing it with this game.
All right.
But yes, now, Joonatan, why don't we hear what your number 3 is?
My number 3 of the year is something that was a couple of years ago on our How Was This So Bad? This is awful. I am so disappointed.
Really?
Yes. Now it is here. Number 3, Cyberpunk 2077 and its expansion, Phantom Liberty.
My goodness, I had heard rumblings that Phantom Liberty was a step up from the base game, but for it to leapfrog your other choices like this is very unexpected.
That's because it's not just Phantom Liberty, it's the entire 2.0 update that they did to it that makes it actually the game that it was supposed to be when they initially released it. Like, if this was what had come out, we would be talking about Cyberpunk in the same breath as The Witcher 3, as one of the definitive adventure RPG, action RPG games of the decade.
Wow.
This is like the game that it was supposed to be. Now it works. Now it has, all the stuff that they were promising that there would be. The city is alive in the way that it was supposed to be. It's not a buggy mess anymore. The skills actually make sense and are much closer to the world of Cyberpunk. The characters have gotten a bunch of updates to function in a way that it makes sense. The expansion pack, the Phantom Liberty, is just a really solid one. But it was so good. Like, they sent me the expansion pack, but the update itself, the 2.0, was so definitive and so good that I started a new game for the review. And as I was playing it, I was like, this is like experiencing a whole new game and a whole new thing all over. And it's easily one of my favorite games of the year. It's a massive update, and a spectacular display of turning it around for the company.
Yeah, I feel always a little conflicted when this situation comes up because I do wish that games were good from the get go, from release.
Mm-hmm.
So rewarding the developer for fixing. I don't want to say fixing their mess. That seems too mean. But for turning it around, it seems like a little. In some way, it feels like am I encouraging this kind of behavior in the future? But the fact that the developers all in these situations do come out and like fulfill their promises still seems like a commendable effort. Still, like I'm so happy to hear that this game, because there were a lot of people excited because of the genre and also the original property. So, they're really doing a favor for these people in a way by turning it around and like making the product good, the game good. So still, I will agree that that's really good. That and I think it's worth it to bring this up here in the list that it's been improved upon like this.
I fully agree with the fact that, like, if I was being very, very persnickety, I would say that, no, you had your release, and, that was it. But, and I would see it in this way, that I wish that companies would look at the situation and go, like, hey, the game's not ready, we should not release it, because look what happens when we release it unfinished. Like, 2 years ago when Cyberpunk came out, I think everybody would agree that it was just like, I don't think anybody liked it. It was just one of those like even trying to be the most charitable that you could be, you could say that it's got potential, but it's not ready.
Yeah. Like Jesse Cox, I remember, tried to like kind of vouch for it because he's kind of friends with the developers a little bit. So I get that he was kind of trying to like pull for the home team, but even he like kind of had to admit and tap out a little bit, back in the day, which, was a little sad to see.
Yeah, and I think that also it shows the problem with a bunch of these things, like so many places, so many big reviewers gave it like 9 out of 10, 5 out of 5, and called it like perfect, and then the same places now are saying that, oh, it was a disappointment. And
a little retroactive history here.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of nonsense and bullshit that really eats away at the good criticism around games, because we're still in the place where we're trying to figure out, is games media just an advertising arm, or is it an actual, artistic review arm of the whole experience? Yeah. And like I had no problems saying when it came out that this is a disappointment. I think I gave it 2 stars at the time, and it was just like that there's so much here that could be good, but it's just, it doesn't function, it doesn't work. And instead, here we are now. Like, now, if it had come out, if it had been an actual release for this year, I think we would have seen a completely different kind of experience with it. And CD Projekt Red probably would have taken a hit for a couple of years in their, stock.
Right, yeah, for the continued delaying, yeah.
Yeah, but like at the same time, releasing it now in the state that it was, I think that would have paid off. That gamble would have paid off, and people would have been able to go and say, it was worth the wait. Let them do whatever they want. We'll just wait for it, because when we wait, we're going to get something like this.
I mean, that's what happened with Baldur's Gate 3. They did release the early access thing, but, that was a very much like, caveat of this thing is very much under work. And that was like 2020, I think, like when they released that.
Yeah, my first look that I wrote about Baldur's Gate is from June 2020 when I got to play it, and it was like, oh, and even then I say that this is like, it's incredibly rough. It's barely functioning in places, but you can already tell where they're going with this.
Yeah,
and then I think I did another one in 2022 where I was like, hey, cool, we'll have to wait still a couple of years maybe, but at least it's looking pretty good. And now here we are.
Yeah, look at it now. Like they stuck it out for those 3 years, basically. Not to mention whatever, I don't remember when they first announced it, but however long they were working on that previously. And like no one is right now talking about like, oh, it took so long. Everyone's just like, holy shit, Baldur's Gate 3, everybody. So yeah. But hey, good job still for CD Projekt Red for They came through in the end as well. So hopefully, 5 years from now, we'll just laugh at that early silliness.
I hope so. But if anybody likes cyberpunk stuff and anybody likes, some really compelling writing in their games and really cool characters and a really like vibrant world, then this is something you should definitely check out, especially Phantom Liberty, which is like you get to experience your own version of Escape from New York.
Oh, yeah, that's... Okay, immediately that raises stocks for me. I hadn't heard it described like that before, and now I'm like,
It's so close to Escape from New York. It's like so many things in there. I'm looking at it going like, oh yeah, you guys have been watching that movie a lot.
Oh my god, amazing. Can you get an eye patch for your character?
I wouldn't be surprised if you could. I have a very specific type of character that I like making, so I didn't even look for eye patches, but I would not be surprised.
I might, just for the LARP sake of my Snake Plissken LARP, might do that. But cool. But yeah, okay, so that was your number 3, right? Am I right here on my list? Yeah, so let's jump up another tier to number 2. What have you got next?
Spider-Man 2.
Right, of course. I don't know why I forgot about this. It was such a big deal, but Spider-Man 2, eh?
I was not expecting a licensed game to be anywhere near the top 5, but here we are. Everything that I liked about the first Spider-Man 3-4 years ago, or 5 years ago already.
Something like that.
Yeah, everything I liked about that has been expanded upon, has been fixed, has been made even better. The story is really good. It has so much more character than any of the new Spider-Man movies has had. And I think one of the things that really sold me on this, like when I knew that I was going to not just like, but really love it, is that there's a entire line of missions where you just go and take photos of different aspects of real life New York things that are like kind of mixtures between real things in New York and stuff that they've made for the game. But it's really mundane things, like people waiting for hot dogs at a stand, or people playing basketball on a rooftop, for example. And then you have Robbie Robertson, Robbie the character from Daily Bugle, calling you and having this dialogue with you about why this part of the city is so important to those who've loved New York. And they talk about the culture, they talk about the immigrant culture there, they talk about the melding pot of everything. And it's like, it has nothing to do with the main story, but you can spend hours just going around doing that. Or then as playing as Miles Morales, the fact that your best friend is deaf mute, and they have implemented, even in the animations, American Sign Language like completely into the thing. And
cool.
And little things like when your friend who is deaf mute like tries to contact you, they're using the voice to text functions, or they do video calls, and like little things like that all over the place make New York in the game feel really alive. And they for me, who's always loved the city, had made it like as a huge love letter, and it's kind of has this innate understanding of why Spider-Man works, because there's such a love for New York and the best stories about him.
Right, yeah.
And like the story gets a little messy toward the end. They try, like, I don't think anyone can make a good Venom story, because Venom is an inherently just dull character.
Ouch. Oh no.
I know that's gonna be a hot take for some, but like I don't see why people are so in love with that character.
So you were in the Sam Raimi boat back during Spider-Man 3, because he wasn't super interested in doing Venom either. He was kind of forced by the XX.
Yeah, because all the other characters are just much more interesting than a alien that makes you angrier. Like Vulture and like all the others are more interesting, and even like Kraven the Hunter, who I always found very silly as a character, makes for a pretty interesting villain in this. But like
interesting,
most of the big conflicts in the game come from like really humane things, and you can tell that the people who made this game have a deep love for the Sam Raimi films, because there's a lot of Sam Raimi callbacks in this.
Interesting. I would expect in this day and age it would lean more on the Tom Holland movies.
No,
this is synergy.
This is way more into the Sam Raimi world, and I think it works much better because of that. And it's one of the only games of the year that I have completed 100%, like every single trophy, every single achievement, and every mission. There's nothing left to explore. It's just waiting for the inevitable story expansion packs that are coming out in a year or two. But like, just a all-around stellar presentation, stellar game, and every once in a while I'll still go back and just do some web swinging because it's so therapeutically fun.
Nice. I'm really happy to hear that because the first one was a really cool game as well. So really, really happy that they kept it up. Because Spider-Man is also cool. I really like that guy as a character. So I'm always happy for good Spider-Man content.
Oh yeah, this is. I think this scratches the itch for every kind of a Spider-Man fan.
I have a really specific Spider-Man question about this game, actually, that I'm wondering about the gameplay and story coming together. If you can avoid spoilers, but still answer it to some extent. So obviously in this story, yeah, Spider-Man gets the symbiote suit. In the story, Peter does. And you get like a bunch of new powers when you have the symbiote suit. Like I've seen in the gameplay trailers that you have a whole host of new abilities basically unlocked. Now, if this follows the standard symbiote storyline, I assume Peter loses the symbiote suit towards the end, at which point I imagine he has to lose all his cool gameplay abilities as well that came with the suit, but is it still satisfying to play that even with that like loss of abilities?
The story makes it so that there is a clear point where you are like, oh no, I have lost the cool abilities. But then it delivers a very rewarding and very well thought out in-universe way of coping with it and continuing on that I think you'll like a lot.
Interesting, because I've been thinking about this, like, how are they going to deal with that? Like, that's like, you know, I don't know if this is ludonarrative dissonance, but it's that thing of where, like, the story has to go one way, but then it might not serve the gameplay, and I've been, like, wondering, like, how do they deal with that? But interesting to hear that they might have something for that.
They deal with it really well, because I had the same concern about the same time when you start getting really OP Venom powers, but they do deal with it in a very classy and a very, very interesting way.
Sweet. All right. Damn. I'm looking forward to hopefully the inevitable Steam release. The first one came out, so maybe.
Fingers crossed. I would love to see it on Steam, because then it would give me an excuse to go back and play it again.
Sweet. Okay, shall I get to my number 2 then at this point?
Yes, please.
Okie dokie. So when we reviewed this game at the start of the year, I said that this was already an early contender for my favorite, and other games would have to work really hard to, unseat this. So unfortunately, it did get unseated. It dropped down to spot number 2, but it's still very well deserved. For me, Octopath Traveler 2 gets the number 2 spot.
Nice. I kind of thought it would be.
Yeah. I mean, what can I say? It's such a what I like in an RPG in a way, but then the added thing of the whole anthology thing, which means that every character gets so much love in the storyline. It it elevates it a lot. That this is one of my favorite examples of this genre, and I know that might get some I might get some comments about the fact that I put this above Baldur's Gate 3, but like I mentioned, I just personally like a established character in an RPG to play as. I found that I like that more than trying to come up with my own character. So the fact that I have 8 of them to just enjoy here, makes it that much more enjoyable than Baldur's Gate 3's create your own character. And I don't know, I guess one thing we never talked about in the review and having a chance, I'll just mention now, is I love how this implemented the job system that is a classic of these kinds of RPGs. When we reviewed Bravely Default 2 a couple of years ago, I mentioned that job class, the secret benefit of a job system is that it allows you to have a smaller cast in an RPG with which then allows more character focus. Well, this one does a really smart way of still allowing a large cast, but still having a job system by having it that you can only change the subclass, and everybody has their like primary class that you can't change, and everybody, even with that primary class, everybody's kind of got their own like special ability that the others don't get if you equip that class as a secondary class, like the Casti has the like she's got the like herb mixing ability, which is like the extra apothecary thing that she can do that makes her like, kind of the definitive apothecary in this game. Other characters, if you find the apothecary class, you can make them apothecaries, but they don't get the like mixing special ability she has. They still get like all those other like ability unlocks that Casti gets. So you still get to like play around with like mixing up abilities and seeing like which classes work with each other. But everybody still kind of retains their own identity by being like kind of the paragon of their class. And everybody ends up still being like a really strong character, even though there is a fairly large cast with 8 people to play as. So I think that's a little like a small detail of the game, but it was when I realized that was happening, it was like so satisfying that it's worth bringing up here, and it's the thing that kind of elevates this to spot number 2 for me.
Nice. That is a really solid pick.
Yeah. Wow. What a good year if you liked RPGs, because we've been dropping so many names here right now. It's fantastic, and soundtrack's great too. Like another just winner. The only thing I wish is all those like outside of combat like special class abilities you use. I really hope they think about it somehow in a future installment that like it's maybe a little more engaging, because after you do it for a few hours, you realize that you can use almost every ability with every NPC, and you kind of realize what they're for there. Like it doesn't feel so unique the longer you play in it. So that's the only thing I would like see maybe a little bit more thought put into in a future installment.
Right.
Yeah, but that's been everything so far. But now we get to our top game of the year, and I suppose I'll go first then.
Do it.
So, yeah, this is the game that beat out Octopath Traveler 2, and people who know me probably this is no surprise at all, but of course Armored Core 6 makes my number 1 spot, The Fires of Rubicon. God damn it. So there is, of course, a giant robot bias here, maybe fudging the numbers a little bit up, but I don't think I would have put it at number 1 if this also wasn't like the perfect entry point into Armored Core. I admit that I haven't played Armored Cores before this. I played Demon Ex Machina, which was by some of the previous developers on the Switch, which I also thought was really, really good. But this one's on another level, Armored Core 6. This one is so satisfying. Like you described when you mentioned it, like the playing around and building your robot is fantastic, and then the real proper difficult missions you jump into are so satisfying, like executing your build and trying to win the level with the robot you built. But this one's also really arcadey, because you do missions that, if it's not a boss that you get stuck on for an hour, they're pretty breezy missions. So even though this is a tried and true FromSoft game, this one is a really breezy feeling one. This one doesn't feel like I have to commit in the same way if I sit down to play a Souls-like. This one I'll just hash out some of these really, really cool missions with my giant robot, and I'll almost always be guaranteed to have a good time. I can't sing the praises of this game enough.
I think I've already also sung a bunch of praises for it as well. It's just a super good entry point into the series, and just a incredibly solid action title all around.
Yeah, and visually amazing. The realization of this like blasted planet that could easily be like, you could get sick of it because it's all a bunch of like depressing grays. But they just keep it like being engaging, and they get really imaginative, the environments you get into towards the end of the game. Like, I was so satisfied. For the first ending, I picked the one where you get to go into low altitude orbit, and I just had like a dumb smile on my face throughout that mission, where the the game briefly turned into a Gundam game because you get to just fly around between ships. Like, it was, wow, that was a stellar experience. And bosses are so fun. Like, I've enjoyed pretty much all of them. There's like standard armored cores, so standard mechs that you fight, but then they mix them up with like even crazier designs that are, make you think of more of a Souls-like. And I've seen some criticism for that. I love it. I think the variety, it just makes it all that much more fun, having really, really crazy like encounters you have to deal with. Like, the really funny story, I'm sure you have also heard about what a difficulty the end of chapter 1 boss was, Balteus.
He was one of those that just shows up and it kind of really knocks the wind out of you the first time you fight him.
Yeah, I was very funny that, because I had heard the stories like chapter 1, if like chapter 1's gonna be a real test, okay, that boss is tough, and I was like, oh boy, okay, and then the mission says this is the end of chapter 1, so I'm like, okay, strap in, and I get to the boss and I'm like, yeah, this guy's tough, oh boy, and I just mash him for a while, and it took me like 3 or 4 times or something, and then I kill him. I'm like, just got this guy. And then the mission keeps going on, and I'm like, that was the boss, right? And and then the supply point shows up, which is an obvious indicator that the mission isn't over, because it's giving you a free resupply of all your gear, and I'm like, oh god. And then the actual the boss of the mission shows up, and I'm just like, mouth wide open as this guy starts coming at me with his millions of missiles, and that was incredible. That was such a good fight. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
That was pretty much my experience as well. Like, after multiple attempts, I think it took me like 10 tries to meet the first part, and then like going, wait, but what? Where's...
Yeah, but it's supposed to be over.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who won.
I would like to go home and nap now.
Yeah, and then this asshole who fires a million missiles just parks his butt in the arena. Oh man, so good stuff. Like, I beat that guy in the same day, but it was I was playing it in the afternoon, and I had to stop for a while, and then towards the evening I was like, no, I have to kill this guy today, or I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. I'll just be in bed thinking I gotta beat that missile guy. And I'm happy I hashed out the win there. Also, shout outs to freaking Patrick Seitz, who is a voice actor I've always enjoyed quite a bit. He is the voice of your handler, Walter, and this is some of his best work ever. I'm he first of all, he does the soulless, menacing kind of mission control guy voice. He really surprised me at the start of the game. He really had whoa, he's so scary. But he gets to go places when the story goes on. He gets to really emote in surprising ways. I think this is some of his best work, I'm gonna say.
I really liked him as well, and I liked all the characters. There's that one early on mission where you're going with the new other grunts and other mercenaries, and everyone is just shit talking you and then talking to each other, and it was such a great world building because you're just constantly trying to catch on to this lingo and to this kind of little storyline that is happening behind you, all around you actually, and you don't get to partake in it that much. It's mostly just as everything lives around you, and you're just kind of a little cog in a machine, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and there's a fight halfway through that I won't spoil, but it's one where you and a bunch of guys team up for a big fight. and everybody gets to play off everybody in a fun way. There's like kind of rivals in that fight, and like lots of different personalities, and some crazy visuals in that one as well that I'm just like, oh my god, they actually nailed the feel of this like giant robot story in this encounter. And there's a funny like even Easter egg. They even thought this out, like, because you're supposed to use a specially designed weapon in that mission, but if you choose to not bring it with you, they'll actually call you out, your like squad mates. They're like, let's see that new weapon of yours. What the? You didn't bring it with you. What is wrong with you? It's like, wow, that's good stuff. It's good stuff all around, and this has to be my number one pick this year. No way that I couldn't give it to Armored Core.
And that just shows how what a good year it's been for everything, or for games.
Yeah, and what variety there is, because I was silently smiling to myself when you dropped Armored Core as your number 10 pick. Like that just goes to show what interesting diversity there is this year for all kinds of tastes. That something like this can rise up as the number one for somebody else.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I will mention I gave Armored Core: Fires of Rubicon, I gave it 5 stars in my review and said that this is the best the series has been in a long time.
Yeah,
and it's at number 10. So here we are.
Here we are indeed. But yeah, I am dying to know then if we can move on to your number one. What do you give the prize to?
Well, it's really the only game that it could be, and that is Final Fantasy 16.
Wow, okay, hot damn. I once again, I mean, I thought about it before we started recording. Like, I've been thinking like you'll probably bring that up, but in all this excitement, I completely ignored the fact that you hadn't brought that up at all today. Wow.
It's like, okay, I will say that I am not alone in loving it, because when I was at the Final Fantasy 14 Fan Fest, just in October, Hironobu Sakaguchi said that it is his favorite Final Fantasy after number 9.
That's no small praise, I think.
Yeah, like he, of course, has a soft spot for number 9, of course, because it is his baby and all that. But he said that Final Fantasy has never been as good as that since, or until now.
Interesting. And the fact that it's as I understand, it's not an RPG anymore. It's more of a character action game. Like, that still like works for you.
I mean, I don't know if Final Fantasy has ever been that much of an RPG, as more of like a, like, if somebody was to put like this and number 7, which is my favorite of the whole bunch together, like the only big differences I would see is that 7 has a little bit more you can do with the weaponry, and like maybe a little bit like because of the fight stuff being different. But like with Final Fantasy 7 Remake and this, they are basically the same. And if we're still going to be treating Final Fantasy 7 Remake as an RPG, then this is certainly an RPG as well.
Interesting. I didn't know that they ran that close parallel. Yeah, that makes sense then. Yeah.
They are, but this is like it's a great story. It's right back to classic Final Fantasy tropes. It's got everything I love about the Final Fantasy series. It's the whole story of, man versus nature, man's inability to not be greedy sons of bitches, and having their comeuppance come from because of it. And it's got really great characters. It's got a really vibrant and beautiful world that I like to explore. I mean, yes, some of the missions are kind of, you can see that the team that worked on it previously worked a lot on MMOs, because some of the missions have that kind of MMO feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, for every mission that isn't good, you have at least a couple of missions that are then really spectacular. And it's got a lot of great quiet character moments. Like, there's an entire line of missions where the whole thing is that one person in your hideaway is worried that another one is depressed, and you just start spending a long time trying to find out how you can help this person not be depressed, or at least, cope with their depression. And it really, really, like, lovingly and empathetically touches upon, the kind of ordinary decency.
Fascinating.
And it's got Mogs in it. It's got really great monsters. The soundtrack is a banger. and all the fight scenes. Like there's an entire fight scene where two icons, or the summons that they are now called icons, fight, and like they fight so hard that they launch themselves into space.
I've heard that the game gets like really very indulgent in the giant monster fights with these, but like in a good way, but it like just gets crazy.
Yeah, absolutely in a good way. And like the fact that like the fights of those icons like actually change the landscape is something that I really enjoyed, because it actually makes them feel like they have weight. Like
interesting. So you mean like the world map actually changes?
Yeah, and like when like I just last night played the new story DLC for it that came out, and I was so happy to see like you go at one point, you climb this massive tower, and if you look out, you can see like the massive craters left behind from your first fight as an icon, and you can see the mountainside that was completely destroyed from another fight, and like it actually leaves behind these things, and then people comment on it throughout the story, because the story takes place over a couple of decades.
Interesting.
So yeah, this was like I still love Final Fantasy, but it's been a number of years really hard, because I didn't like 15, I didn't like 13. I have tried playing the MMO, and I enjoy the MMO for what it is, but I don't have the time to get into an MMO.
They say it's the best MMO around right now, but you know, if that isn't the scene, then even that can be hard to.
Yeah. I've put like 50 hours into it over the years, and like that's nothing compared to some of the people I met at the FanFest who've put like thousands of hours into it. But like, if I played nothing else, I would probably be thrilled about it. It's really good for what it is. But like again, I didn't like 13 either, and I didn't particularly like 12, and I was iffy on 10. So it's been a long time coming, and then this one comes out, and just I completely fell in love with it, and I think it's a really good time to be a Final Fantasy fan, because you've had the Pixel remaster earlier this year, you have Octopath Traveler that is really close to Final Fantasy, you have Final Fantasy 16, which I think is the best game of the year, and then in just like a month and a half, we are getting Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth.
Oh yes, of course. So yeah, that when you put it like that, wow, Square is doing some crazy magic right now.
It is, and like, and the Rebirth was really cool, because the most recent trailer they released for it had a disclaimer that it's a PlayStation exclusive until I think it was April or something like that.
Oh wow, that's only like 3. Yeah, that's different from usual. It took like a year, I think, the previous one. So
yeah. So I'm excited to see when we will get to see. Oh, I'm sorry. I looked at it's exclusive up to May 29th, 2024.
Oh, but it's still comparatively short, I would say.
Yeah,
compared to like the embargoes or the console exclusivity they've had like in the past.
Right. So with any luck, and because Yoshi P just gave a interview just I think a month ago, or it's less than a month ago even, where he said that the PC version of Final Fantasy 16 is like almost ready, and you know, get your butts ready for that. And
I read something about like the exclusivity ends at the end of the year was the quote I read.
Right. So I would be really surprised if we didn't get some kind of an announcement that Final Fantasy 16 drops on the PC around the same time as 7 Rebirth comes out on PS5, and then like by the time that 7 Rebirth, the exclusivity ends, we're going to start seeing news about that coming to the PC a lot faster than the 7 Rebirth took.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. As somebody who recently beat FF7 Remake, I would like not waiting like two more years for the get to the next part.
Yeah, and like I really loved 7 Remake, and I think 7 Rebirth is my most anticipated game of the year. So here we are.
Yeah, good. I totally get that. Do you think, because the concerns that I had a little bit I've voiced before are that I wasn't sure, A, how long part 2 is going to go, and B, how well they're going to do like a much more open world compared to Midgar's, much more smaller scale like surroundings. And well, now the trailers have revealed that, yeah, we're going to go like quite far next in the Final Fantasy VII story from where it left off. It's not a small snippet, and I'm wondering. And now that you played 16, do you think they were able to realize a huge explorable world well in that? And do you think that's going to mean? Do you think it's going to work out well for Rebirth as well?
I think there are two different teams there that are working, and I know that
Right.
Rebirth is going to be trying different things than what 16 did. 16 is kind of 16. Yoshi P at least said in the interview that I did with him. He said that that 16 was like really just trying to figure out new things, what they could do, and they learned. It was their learning experience.
Wow. Well, that worked out better than you could hope for a learning experience.
Oh yeah, and like I think that 16 has some issues with some of the areas, like having that MMO-ish feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
But like I thought it was still a really, really wonderful open world that I really enjoyed exploring. And I think that 7 Rebirth is going to be a different kind of beast, because they have like, you can have the chocobos there, you can do all kinds of things with that, and you can like use the vehicles to traverse the environment. So they're going to be bigger already, but it's not going to be the kind of open world that we had back on PlayStation 1. I'm not too worried about it. I think it's going to be exciting to see what they do. A couple of my friends got to play it at the Tokyo Game Show. And,
neat.
And they came away just fawning at what you could do with even the limited area. They got to explore like the Chocobo Ranch and the Midgar Solemn area. And they
cool.
and they said that alone was already absolutely massive.
Okay, I really hope, because my biggest like I think critique with Remake, the previous part, was their insistence on like stretching out some areas into like being their own chapter. Like it could have trimmed the fat in a lot of places. I'm actually hoping, now that I think about it, that since this is going to be a really big place, they're actually going to be a lot smarter in keeping them more constrained, all these separate places. But which means they're going to be a little bit more dense and more interesting with like the content and the flow of content, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hope so too. Like there are some areas about the Midgard that I felt were a little bit too long, but I think it's going to be very different once we get to the open world, because there's so many places that I would have liked to spend more time in with with the original PlayStation 1. Like I would have wanted to spend much more time in like Costa del Sol, or I would have wanted to spend more time in Junon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And like getting to it now and like seeing what they're doing in the trailers and seeing what they are promising, I think that there's a lot of reason to be excited about this. And it's really close. I think like I wouldn't be surprised if like I would already be playing this time next month. I'll probably be already playing it.
Oh man, you lucky dog, you. But hey, that's great, and that was the best games of the year according to these two yuckos here. Thank you so much, Joonatan, for joining me today
thank you.
Have a year in review. And also a little bit about next year. We're both pretty excited for that Final Fantasy VII. And anything else you really quickly want to mention that, apart from Final Fantasy Fever, that might be on the future?
Not right now, because I don't really. It's so unclear what kind of games are coming out next year, because this was such a big year. So
exactly,
naturally, next year is going to be a lot more quiet. I'm hoping that next year is going to be at least a couple of really solid titles. There's all kinds of rumors and all kinds of talk about, once again, that Nintendo is going to be updating the Switch finally, and if that happens,
Switch 2 at last.
Yeah, and if that happens, I would be interested to see what comes out of that. And of course, I'll be thrilled to review it if it does come out. But like, Nintendo keeps always an extremely tight ship on this.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say. There's there's a Dune game coming out from the folks that made Conan Exiles. And
interesting.
I'm really excited about that because I love Conan Exiles. You've played it with us, and then
yeah, the survival one.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. But like getting something that's going to be in the Dune universe, that's going to be like more of a survival exploration in a world that kind of lends itself to this kind of very different kind of survival is going to be really interesting to see. We have a new Dragon's Dogma coming out.
That's true. Yeah, that's one of those cult classics. So there's a subset of people who are really hyped for that.
Yeah, I'm sad that it doesn't have co-op still. It's still a one-player thing only. But I'm still excited to go back and fight some big monsters and all that. And of course, we have the new Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, so it looks so fun.
Yeah, like all of those Like a Dragon games have been a lot of fun. So I'm excited about that. There's a couple of PlayStation 5 games that were promising to come out. Like we are still holding out hope that we're getting a Banishers of Ghosts of New Eden, which is like another small, like almost indie title that looked really good at Gamescom when I saw it, but it's been pushed back a couple of times. And there's been talk of a PSVR 2 release of Aces of Thunder, which is one of those things that, like, again, promises a lot. I'm a little hesitant to get too excited. And of course, we have more Metal Gear stuff coming. We have Metal Gear Snake Eater Delta, or what was it called? Let's see what Konami does with that, because the Metal Gear
that one's a little, I don't know. We know very little about it, but what I know is it's not the biggest effort thing being made.
No, and the Metal Gear release was a little bit disappointing in its own way. We talked about that a lot last time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll check it out. Holding out hope, but maybe my confidence is a little low.
Yeah, but then we have also a new Team Ninja game, Rise of the Ronin, coming out, which looks really cool.
Interesting. I haven't even heard about that one.
So I'm excited about that. And I got myself. I was happily. I accepted. I received some grant money. So next year I will be definitely going to Gamescom again.
Oh, fantastic!
Yes, I'm very happy that worked out, because I don't think I would have been able to afford it otherwise. But I was happily, the Finnish Critics Association saw fit to give me a little bit of a grant to go and expand my horizons once again. So I will be there next year, and hopefully, a bunch of new things will come up at that time.
Oh, sounds solid. We'll have to see if I can also finagle myself that way. Didn't make it this year, but you never know.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a really great festival, or a conference event, something.
There's no E3 anymore, so this one does the job pretty well, I guess.
From what I've heard from people who've been to both, people seem to like this one better than they did E3. This one is a lot more homespun. It's a lot more intimate, and it's a lot more of like the city is much more accessible.
Okay, I hope it stays that way too. We need something like this, I feel like, in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you?
I'll drop one more game name that is worth bringing up, I think, that's coming out pretty soon. This year, another genre we didn't bring up today that got a lot of love this year was the fighting game genre, with Street Fighter 6 like breaking the mold finally, and really seemed to like elevate that to a new level with a lot of people. I didn't have time this year to get into fighting games, so I didn't have a chance. As much as I love Street Fighter, didn't have a chance to play around with 6 this year. Yeah. But Tekken 8 is coming out pretty soon, and I think that's going to be my jam then when that comes out. Especially because they announced the entire cast. I was in my fingers crossed. My favorite, Elisa, is going to be in the cast of 8. I thought it was a little shaky because there's a lot of people, a lot of Tekken fans who do not like Elisa, but I can now just selfishly be very happy that I can play as my favorite character. So I'm hoping, no promises, but that would be a good opportunity for a little bit of streaming once Tekken 8 comes out. I will try to do something with that in the future.
I've played it now twice at different events, and I am very excited about it. I think it's going to be a good one.
Oh, I love to hear that.
And I mean, it has Vincent Cassel in it, and that's always a good thing.
I know, that's a crazy get, because I looked up, and like, right, he's been in all of this stuff. Like, that's not just some voice actor guy. Like, he's a pretty big deal in France.
Yeah, and he's been in a lot of my favorite films, and he's such a cool presence everywhere he is that I'm excited to see what they do with him.
His character looks hilarious. Yeah, definitely. It seems fun, too.
Yeah, but I look forward to getting my ass handed to me on some online games.
Yeah, looks to be in the future for both of us, eh?
Absolutely.
But yeah. Hey, this was great, and I hope everybody listening also has had a great year as well, and hope there was some really good tidbits here today as we gushed about this delightful year of games. And realistically speaking, probably won't be a year this crazy again for a while, but hopefully it'll still be nice next year, yeah?
I hope so. Like, a quiet year will be just fine for a while.
And killing this backlog of ours, yeah, in that sense, would also be nice.
Absolutely. But thank you for having me. Thank you for this year.
Thank you as well, and thank you everybody listening out there, and everybody stay safe, and catch you later. Bye-bye!
Bye-bye.